Welcome to Mach 10 Sports and this September 7th, 2023 episode. I appreciate you joining us. It's week two, nowhere to hide in this one. Before we get down to business, though, sorry, I'm just checking a message there from Carter Karels, who will be joining us. We'll get to that in just a minute. Let me send him over that link. 1 second. Guest. Let's get him in here. It's going to be, guys, we got a jam-packed session. We had another guest that was about to join us in just a moment, but she got sick. So she's out for this one. I hate it because she would have been good. Let me let him know we just sent that link so we can start getting rocking and rolling, baby. Just sent. All right, perfect. All right, guys, like I said, I am glad you were with us. This episode of Mach 10 Sports, a September 7th episode. It's here, guys. Week 2, we're about to find out a lot in the SEC. This week, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We are about to find out a lot. SEC coming off a bad week last week. 1-3 in the first weekend. Obviously, you had the loss from LSU. LSU to Florida State took a loss. South Carolina took an L to North Carolina. 0-2 against the ACC. Got to get that figured out. Also, Tennessee got the one win. When I say it was a big win, they're favored by 27.5 points there. So I really wouldn't say it was a big one. Then Florida losing to Utah. Not good for the SEC. It's usually the opposite. The SEC usually takes a step forward and makes a statement in week 1. But a lot of opportunities. 6 non-conference matchups across the league that I think are worthy of talking about. We obviously got a couple more. We'll get into all of them. We'll get into all 14 matchups. We have we have one fantastic guest. I was still thinking Leah was joining us. We have one fantastic guest going to join us. We did have Leah Van, Texas Longhorn beat writer from the Texas Lone Star live show. It was going to join us, talk a little Alabama, Texas. She's a little under the weather. She was a little under the weather, unfortunately. A lot of LSU fans will know her. She used to cover LSU on the beat for the Advocate. We will have to get her on a little bit later. And obviously, Texas joining the league in 24. We'll get her on again. But again, the show must go on. But Carter Karels here, who covers the Texas A&M Aggies for GigEm 247, will come discuss the Aggies trip this weekend to the 305. If you don't know the 305, it's Miami, baby. Texas A&M heading to Miami. Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher returning that trip for that low-scoring pillow fight of a matchup last year at Kyle Field in College Station. But Carter will join us here around the 7:45, kind of right after the bottom of the hour. So stay with us. We'll preview the Texas A&M and Texas Alabama game after he joins us. But it's Making Money Thursday too, guys. 7 picks. There's a winner and a loser. Last week, 3 and 4. We got to get that better. 5 and 6 for the season. It's kind of where we want to be. It's like I say with my bets. Give me a couple weeks. We go back, watch some film. It takes about 3 or 4 weeks to get a real feel for a team. Again, a lot of overreactions after week 1. There's going to be a lot of overreactions after week 2. How many years can you always go back and be like, man, we really liked them after week 1? Like Florida last year always comes to mind. And then the very next week, I remember Florida beat Utah last year. Everybody was high on them, even myself a little bit. Come back, same place in the swamp, drop one to Kentucky. Teams, again, the old cliche of teams make their biggest improvement, their biggest step from week 1 to week 2. And that's what Mach 10 is going to do too, baby. The biggest step from week 1 to week 2. We're going 7-0 this week. 7-0, blood bank guarantee, guys. Blood bank guarantee. That's what we got. We got a lot going on for you. But let's start off around the SEC. Mixing a little round ball in this discussion too. Jalen Key and Malachi Moore. We're going to stick on the football side of the gridiron. We're practicing on Wednesday for the Crimson Tide. In case you missed it, they left the Middle Tennessee State game for Alabama. Second half, some little banged up, undisclosed injury, but they were back on the practice field on Wednesday. For people who don't know, traditionally, if someone isn't practicing by Wednesday, usually means they're not going to be ready for game day on Saturday. Usually you got, depends if your team practices on Sunday or Monday. I've been on both staffs. If they're not practicing within the first 3 days of practice, probably not going to see them to game day. So it's a good sign. Jalen Key, the UAB transfer, got the start at safety against Middle Tennessee State. Malachi Moore, I feel like he's been on the roster since Joe Namath was on the team. Malachi Moore got the start at the nickel position. The star position is what Alabama calls the inside defensive back. Will be crucial for both of them. For Alabama, with a Texas team that has some weapons, and if Quinn Ewers can consistently hit the deep shots, and I anticipate Texas taking advantage of that, they're going to test that Alabama secondary because I like the corners. I mean, Terry and Arnold, Kool-Aid McKinstry are good players, but again, secondary, especially with a young guy like Caleb Downs playing secondary, you need a veteran guy who's played a lot of football, similar to not the level in the SC, but Jalen Keith's played a lot of football in his career, going back to UAB. That's a little update there in Tuscaloosa on the defensive backfield. Florida DB Jadarius Perkins has entered the transfer portal. Got a little bit of time, was fighting for that nickel position in that secondary for Austin Armstrong and that Florida defense. Played a little bit in that Utah game. I guess he didn't really like what he was. If you go back and read his statement today on why he was transferring, he thanked everybody but Billy Napier. Must have been a little bit of a falling out there. I don't know what that was. But again, Florida defensive back Jadarius Perkins has entered the transfer portal. And then Florida, this little former Florida Gator, Jervon Dexter, suing Big League Advance Fund for violation of Florida's NIL and agency policies. I mean, from what I gathered, apparently he was unsure or unaware, I guess, of a clause in his deal that states he owes 15% of his pre-tax NFL earnings for 25 years. All that for a deal would have just given him a $436,000, $436K. Yeah. Again, sometimes we take this short-term view instead of long-term view. Players, I know we may not have a lot of players watch this, but players, be careful who you're dealing with just from an agent standpoint, please. Just be careful who you trust. Make sure they're reading the fine line, the fine letterings within your contracts. That's what they're there for. That agent should be fired for not knowing that. I don't know all the details. Thought I would bring this up, though. And from a standpoint, I see a lot of people bash them. Schools need to educate them. Schools do educate the student athletes on NIL deals. But remember, the schools can't really have much dealing with that. But I think it can be better. I will agree with most. It can be better. It's more than just a team meeting. Hey, 130 you guys come in here and we're going to tell you, hey, be careful about NIL. Make sure you're doing stuff correctly. Log stuff in with compliance. That's surface level bullcrap right there. It needs to be more in depth. Need to treat it. A lot of these schools need to go visit NFL teams and have maybe within the athletics department, hire 2 to 3 people. I know things are more expensive now with inflation. Come on, these athletic departments have the budgets to go hire, not just for football, but for all sports, 2 or 3 people initially, eventually branch out of people who are business people. They've looked at sports contracts before, not people that are just social media influencers. They can go talk about how many followers they have or how many interactions they get on TikTok, Twitter, on Instagram. That's irrelevant. We're talking about the fine line details for these athletes that are obviously getting missed. I mean, 15% of his pre-tax NFL earnings for the next 25 years. You got to be kidding me. How'd they miss that? That's embarrassing. That's like agent malpractice. I mean, what are we doing here? The schools, again, they need business people. I think that would be a good investment for ADs across the country. But again, former Florida player Jervon Dexter, we'll see how this works out, suing Big League Advance Fund for the violations of Florida NIL and agency. I also saw like Fernando Tatis, I think, was with this same agency, and he's having some issues. And then the shortstop for the Reds, his name slips my mind real fast, but he is also with that agency as well. So I thought that was real interesting as well. But moving on, I told you we're talking a little round ball in this one. Call me crazy. Hey, we're going to week 2. What are we talking about college basketball for? Remember, we covered this is Mach 10 sports, the big 3 sports in the SEC: football, basketball, and baseball. And you know what? The SEC released its 2024 conference basketball schedule for this upcoming season. Just a few takeaways before we get into it. Kentucky. I mean, for my standpoint right here, I mean, you got a little bit of this is Florida's schedule right here, a 5-game stretch. Call me crazy here. Kentucky, at Florida, at Ole Miss, Arkansas, at Tennessee, at Missouri, Mississippi State. That's a 6-game stretch, right? That's brutal for Florida. We'll get to Florida here in a minute. Just kind of stuck out to me there. Kentucky at Ole Miss, I think it's going to be an improved team with first-year head coach Chris Beard. Arkansas, from top to bottom, most talented probably group in the league. At Tennessee, Thompson Bolin, rumored Tommy Bowles getting renamed. I forget what it is. But at Tennessee, always tough. At Missouri, you see Dennis Gates' squad going down a little bit. So I could see Missouri being that team that isn't as tough as they were last year. I mean, they lost some of their better players, Kobe Brown being one. The Mississippi State, I think Mississippi State's going to be pretty good too. I think both Mississippi schools are going to be good. Mississippi State got a couple of freshmen, the Marshall transfer to come over. as well. If they can get any kind of offense production, the defensive guys are back. Four out of their starting fives back between Tolu Smith, a couple other guys, Matthews. Mississippi State's gonna be pretty good. From watching them over their overseas tournament, I forget it was in France or Spain, they looked pretty good. If they can get some offensive scoring going, watch out for Mississippi State, potential Sweet 16 team. Call me crazy. Another one, I talk with my buddies all the time. The biggest rivalry in the SEC right now is the Nate Oates versus Eric Musselman rivalry. Two totally different people, two totally different styles. And I mean, Alabama's had a lot more regular season success, head-to-head success, championship success. Not as much tournament success, but Alabama hasn't not had tournament success. 2 Sweet 16 appearances in 3 years. But Muss and the boys, what is that? 3-4 years in a row. Back-to-back Elite Eight performances, Sweet 16 out of nowhere this year with a team that finished 10th in the SEC. Muss knows how to press the right buttons come March. But again, my point being in this one, Alabama, Arkansas in Tuscaloosa to end the year. Last game of the regular season in Coleman Coliseum. Now, I'll give Arkansas fans this a little bit. They've gotten kind of screwed in the scheduling because Arkansas has had to go to Tuscaloosa to Coleman Coliseum for 5 straight seasons. This is the only matchup this year. This is the only matchup. 2 years ago, it was the only matchup, and it was in Tuscaloosa. Arkansas hasn't got that trip back when it's just been a one-game matchup this year. When Alabama and Arkansas have only played once. When they played twice last year, Alabama won in both. But when it's just been a one-game, when they've only played each other once in a season, it's usually in Tuscaloosa. So I get the gripe there from the Razorback fans. Tennessee, they have a rough stretch as well. I've noticed a 3-game rough stretch. At A&M, Auburn at home, and at Alabama. That'll be tough to end the year. And really, the whole SEC, before we wrap this up, obviously I know it's football season. We're going to get to football. A lot of the SEC will depend on how good Ole Miss and Florida really end up being. That's really what it's going to be. I mean, Florida essentially overhauled their whole roster, lost their best player, Colin Castleton. Ole Miss brought in a bunch of guys. Murray's going to be a good player. Matthew Morrell's back, which feels like he's been playing since Pete Maravich played at LSU. I mean, Matthew Morrell's been on the team for a while. Chris Beard, they're going to be really good defensively, and they're going to rebound. I think Ole Miss is going to be a potential fringe bubble team on the hardwood this year. But I think the SEC, how deep it is, I think 1 through 8, 9 is going to be very competitive. Again, how good are Ole Miss and Florida going to be? Can a team like LSU or Georgia kind of step up to raise the floor of the league as well? Continuing off around the SEC, good article I read today. Chris Lowe, Texas A&M article. He spent a couple of days with Texas A&M, I think, throughout the fall game. He did an article on Jimbo Fisher and about the relationship with Bobby Petrino so far. Pretty interesting read. Not a lot of stuff you don't already know, but if you have some time, Chris Lowe always does a great job. Talk to him pretty regularly. He does a great job of bringing the behind-the-scenes stuff from your favorite team to the pen and paper in real layman's term that anyone can use. But again, Chris Lowe did a good job behind the scenes at Texas A&M. I go check that out. And then finally, I know this isn't the SEC, but I just wanted to get into it just real quickly. Obviously, you saw in North Carolina's Tez Walker, the transfer that was ruled or suspended or ruled ineligible against South Carolina last week, is now ruled ineligible for the entire season. Mac Brown, I'm not going to read it to you, sent like a page-long statement out from the North Carolina football Twitter account if you want to go look at it. I've never seen a coach go after the NCAA as hard as he has or did. I mean, he just totally attacked him. And I get it from both sides. But at the same time, this is something Mac Brown, people are going to pat Mac Brown on the back, and I think he does a great job. Good guy from what I know about him. But again, he's the guy that's kind of been complaining about the transfer portal. They don't need to go to the one-time transfer. And he's kind of been complaining about setting that up. Well, the NCAA kind of drew a line here and said, hey, no, he's already used his one-time transfer from North Carolina Central. And I think the thing that's getting lost is he got his 2020 COVID season, Tez Walker did, transfer from North Carolina Central, if I remember right. Sorry, correct me if someone's wrong, if I'm wrong. But, he says he wanted to get back home. He went and visited Rutgers in New Jersey and New York City. I think it's a little bit of the cop-out. I get the complaint. Usually these coaches are not going to go complain about the NCAA stuff until it's affecting their own team. And I think that's where we are right now. I get it. Mac Brown's frustrated. I think some teams are like, look at JT Daniels and his 6th, 7th year quarterback at Rice. When does his transfer stop? Oh, but you're telling me my guy's Tez Walker, who is from North Carolina, can't transfer. He was at North Carolina Central, so he's already in his in-home state, but wanted to stay there. Dude, I think some family reason too. he can't go. Why is he not immediately eligible? And why is he suspended? Why is he ineligible for the whole season? I mean, I get these thought processes. I really do. But at the same time, it is what it is. I mean, the problem is there has to be uniformed transfer rules. It's got to be if you're a kid or a family member of anyone listening to this show that has a collegiate athlete, just remember, just to be safe, you may sneak through a loophole and get 2 transfers. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you get 1 transfer, and you get your grad transfer. So kind of think about that. And if you're a COVID kid, I mean, you get the extra year too, but really get the 2 free transfers, if you're including the 1 free transfer and the grad transfer. But just think about it really 1 if you're someone who's mentoring somebody who's in the collegiate athletics game right now. And it's just that simple. Like if we transferred once and I'm trying to transfer again, I may get held up. But again, it has to go back to the NCAA just setting hard guidelines of this transfer stuff. I think sometimes they were like, well, coaches, you wanted the like who was the tight end? He tried to I forget what his name, Luke, somebody tight end went to Georgia, was wanting to transfer to Illinois because his grandpa was sick, but he couldn't get cleared. But Justin Fields got cleared immediately at from Georgia to go to Ohio State when he claimed a lot of racial stuff, which obviously would happen in the stands. We're not going to get into it. It was wrong, but he claimed he feared for his life, but yet his sister stayed there and played on the track team. It doesn't make sense. It's all over the place. It's a bunch of gray area. Waivers are being issued. The waivers have to stop. Let's just draw the line today and say, hey, if you've transferred, you're not grandfathered in, you're there. And I get it. People are going, well, that's not fair. Well, life isn't fair. But this stuff just gets real frustrating just because I think at times we just totally forget that the NCAA has really no governance. And here, if I'm North Carolina, it's easy for me to say, I would let him play. What are they going to do? Well, I asked somebody that today who would know, well, it could be a lack of institutional control. According to who? The NCAA is a dying organization every day, every moment it passes by. Currently, right now, it is 7-18. In 7-19, they were slowly dwindling to even being more irrelevant. Let him play. What are they going to do? It's slowly becoming a governing body that is not going to matter. I would let him play. It's easy for me to say. I'm not the one. I'm not an AD. I'm not the one having to go answer to my president and stuff. Because again, some of these presidents don't care about athletics. But again, it's ridiculous. At this point right now, hey, if you transfer once, you can't transfer again. Let's draw a hard line in the sand here. Some adult here. Let's go make a decision here because it's all over the place, man. And again, some of it's coaches. Coaches whine about the transfer portal shouldn't be able to transfer until it's affecting their own team. So it goes both ways. Don't act like Tez Walker's just totally innocent here. He talked about he wanted to get back home, but yet he took an official visit up to Rutgers in New Jersey when he's from North Carolina. Didn't really hold a lot of weight to me. And again, I know this wasn't an SEC topic, but just wanted to bring it up. Getting out of a little bit of around the SEC. Let's talk about some matchups around the SEC coming up that aren't the big ones. About to share my screen with you here. Hold tight with me here. Let's bring up the SEC schedule here. Perfect. All right. Vanderbilt, Wake Forest. It's an early kickoff, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone on the ACC Network. Vanderbilt, 10.5-point dog right now. 10.5-point dog. Commodores rolling in 2-0, trying to become the first team in college football this year to get to 3-0. Wake Forest took it to them last year. Vanderbilt, let's be honest, guys, have not looked very good in their first 2 matchups against Hawaii and Alabama A&M. I think it was 5-2 at one point against Alabama last week. Vanderbilt kind of exploded, ran away with it in the second half with Alabama A&M. But a lot of people doubting Vandy here. The thing that I will say Vanderbilt may have here is Wake Forest isn't going to see the length that Vanderbilt's a long defensive line. They're getting some guys back. The quarterback, I forget his name, Griffiths for Wake Forest. Pardon, I forget his last name. But he's a 5'10.5", 5'11" quarterback. They haven't seen that yet. They played Elon last week, looked pretty good. But again, I think Vanderbilt could create some havoc up front for him. But again, God, can Vanderbilt secondary cover anyone? It is a poor group. It's not a good group. But on the flip side of that, Vanderbilt's got some very winnable plus wide receivers outside on the backside. I mean, you got Seth McGowan, Will Shepard, guys like that. And I like A.J. Swan. Got a little Brett Favre-ish to him, a little Jay Cutler. Sorry, using the Vanderbilt issue or analogy there. But again, I think he's one of the best. I think he's the best quarterback ceiling-wise. Some call me crazy with Kyle Shermer, but I think he's the best quarterback from a ceiling wise they've had probably since Jay Cutler. Call me crazy. He can make some plays if he gets enough time. Because if he gets pressure on his feet from the interior of the defensive line against Wake Forest, and Dave Clawson them do, the Wake Forest head coach, and them do a fantastic job scheming up that. My concern with Vanderbilt here, guys, we didn't get in a major breakdown of this, but this would be probably the sixth game we need to talk about. It's just, are they going to give AJ Swann enough time? And even if they get up 14-0, can they hold it? Because the secondary is so bad. I think Vanderbilt's getting some guys back from health, from injuries that they haven't had the first 2 weeks this week. But again, an early kickoff, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone. Plus, they're giving Vanderbilt 10.5, kind of like Wake here. Remember, bet my life, nothing in return on TikTok. The over-under win total this year, Vanderbilt the team win total 3.5. I took the over. I like the Doors. I still kind of like the Doors. My guy Tyler Siskey's always giving me crap about it. I mean, he doesn't think they'll win another game. I mean, they got UNLV left, but this is one of those. If they want to get, if you're cheering for Vanderbilt to hit the over 3.5 win total, this is one they may need. This is one they may need to get. Certainly next week. Like I've said, they need, after the Hawaii game, you kind of saw some chinks in the armor. They need to split the Wake Forest UNLV game. It could start this week, but I don't think it does. Just have too much respect for Dave Clawson and them. They're going to come up with a good defensive scheme to be in AJ Swann's face. I think a lot. Vanderbilt will kind of have some of their explosive plays too, because I like the receivers. Plenty good enough to win, but I think ultimately Wake Forest gets the job done. Ball State at Georgia. Georgia, again, getting a little tune-up before their first SEC matchup against South Carolina next week. 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone kickoff on the SEC Network. I could see this being another groany game. I think Georgia's favored by 41.5 in this one. The Georgia fans are like, what's going on with Carson Beck? Like, why are we not scoring 56? Dang it, Bobo. What are we doing? You couldn't sniff Todd Monken's jockstrap. All right. I mean, let's be honest here. Georgia didn't come out and light the world on fire last week against who was them? Who did UT Martin, Skyhawks last week. Again, I can see a little bit of it this week. Ball State, I mean, look at the time. It's 11 a.m. If you really think Georgia, just players in general, college players of all time, especially in today's time, though, really going to get fired up for Ball State, think again. I look for Georgia to come out next week really hot, looking really good. We're going to talk about how Georgia kind of sleptwalked through the first 2 weeks, but I think they're going to put us on notice again next week at Sanford Stadium in Athens when the South Carolina Gamecocks come to town. I mean, if North Carolina, who is improved on the defensive line, racked up 9 sacks, and held South Carolina to -2 rushing yards last week in Charlotte, what is Georgia going to do in Sanford Stadium? Add in the fact Kirby Smart does not like Shane Beamer, and he'll run up the score if he gets a shot. I'm telling you. Shane Beamer is not very liked around the league. I kind of get it from stories I've heard, kind of don't from what you see on the surface. I don't know Shane Beamer like that, but it's interesting. Apparently, Kirby Smart will run the score up on him. That's one guy in the league in Florida, no matter who's the coach, that he will go run the score up on those teams, or that guy, whoever Shane Beamer's coaching and whoever is the head coach at the University of Florida. But Georgia should cruise here, 41.5. It's a lot of points to give up. I don't know if I touch that, but again, I think Georgia could start off a little slow. Wouldn't shock me, though, if Georgia's up 42-0 at half. Just put it that way. Look for Georgia to peak next week, though. Kirby's going to have those boys' attention next week. Eastern Kentucky at Kentucky, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on SEC Network Plus or ESPN Plus. Kentucky gets to ease into their schedule a little bit before their first big game is when Florida comes to town in a couple weeks. When Florida comes to town in I think 2 to 3 weeks, Florida comes into town. I'd have to look at the schedule again. I think it's in about 3 weeks. That's really – Kentucky's kind of got an easy stretch rolling up. Let me pull it up real fast just to get the schedule up because I want to talk about this. Because Kentucky's got a little bit of time to get things right. They didn't look great last week. Yeah, Eastern Kentucky this week, Akron at home next week, at Vandy, and then Florida comes to town. Then it gets real. They go to Athens. That's why I think Kentucky's going to be 5-0. Rolling into Athens, but specifically this week, they should get the job done against the Colonels, Eastern Kentucky. They should get the job done, but just continue to watch that offensive line. I mean, last week, Kentucky got a defensive score, special team score, made the score look a little worse than it actually was if you just looked at the box score. If you went back and watched the game, there were still some issues with that big blue wall, Kentucky's offensive line. That's the nickname for it if you're just new to the show. But Kentucky should be able to get some push against Eastern Kentucky. And I know people are like, well, you can't take a lot off. Like, for example, this week, you can't take a lot off the Rice Texas game. I've been seeing that a lot. I get it. Texas didn't open up the playbook. Georgia didn't open the playbook against UT Martin. Alabama didn't really open the playbook up against Middle Tennessee State. A lot of blitzing there from Middle Tennessee State. But my point being, you can still tell from getting pushed from your offensive line against their defensive line. We'll get in that. We'll talk about Texas here in a bit. I'll have some film to back that up. But you have to take it. Kentucky needs to lean on Eastern Kentucky. I'm real interested to see. This game's at 2:30. I'll be honest with you. I'll probably be keeping up with this game. Won't be fully engaged watching it. I'll go back and watch it. But I want to see Kentucky get some push from that offensive line. Let's rotate some offensive linemen. Let's don't have Devin Leary in the court in this game in the second half. But let's work on the things we need to get to. Let's let Liam Cohen and him iron those wrinkles out. Because again, they probably got about another week or two to do it. Don't want to say a conference game against Vanderbilt when you start wrinkling stuff out. We'll find out with Vandy in the next 2 weeks, see how good they are for Kentucky faces. But again, they got this week against Eastern Kentucky to figure it out and against Akron to figure it out. We'll get to these other games in just a minute. 3 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kickoff. Kent State at Arkansas on the SEC Network. Kent State, the Golden Flashes, took the loss to UCF in the night last week. In a pretty big fashion. Kent State looked better a little bit in the second half. Arkansas got a big win against the Catamounts of Western Carolina. I just wanted to see Arkansas start fast last week, and they did. I mean, again, I don't think you're going to get a lot out of this game against Kent State, a little bit more than you would Western Carolina. But again, I want to see Arkansas come out. I think Arkansas's favored by 38.5. Start quicker. I know the defense is going to play with their hair on fire. I know they're going to play hard. That's what Travis Williams' is bread and butter is, a relationship with his players. They're going to play to a standard from an effort standpoint. And again, these are college football players, SEC players. We shouldn't be asking that, but you'd be surprised. We shouldn't be talking about effort, but you'd be surprised. Oh, I want to see a little bit better interior play on the offensive line. I know they're banged up a little bit at Arkansas, and Sam Pittman said. But again, got to start getting some of these wrinkles out. BYU, the Cougs come to town next week. That'll be Arkansas's first real test before they head to Baton Rouge for their first SEC game. I know usually that game's used to be when I was a kid, the last game of the regular season. Now what? It's fourth game of the regular season. So we'll get to that one here in just a minute. So we'll continue with that one. But 38.5, I don't know. It's just a lot of points. I'm not going to touch that one. If I had to bet, maybe I'd probably go Arkansas. Though. But again, Arkansas trying to iron out those wrinkles before we really get into some play starting next week. I mean, they're going to be tested some next week. BYU's got enough guys to really test Arkansas. But again, let's start fast, Arkansas. That's what I'm looking for. But again, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on the SEC Network. 4 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kick. Austin Peay, the Govs, coming over from Clarksville, heading to Knoxville, Neyland Stadium. Again, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kickoff on SEC Plus, ESPN Plus. Looks like it'll be after that Kentucky game. Tennessee, let's just see Joe Milton. I mean, they're not going to really get tested. They got this trip to Gainesville to the Swamp next week. See, they already came out with some lines. Tennessee, only a 6.5-point favorite against Florida. I knew that would happen. They're a little concerned about Tennessee going on the road for their first real road game this year, and Joe Milton. We'll see. But Joe Milton, gotta take those shots. Problem I got with Joe sometimes is Joe will go overthrow a receiver on his first deep shot. Then the next shot Heupel comes back to, whether it's to Ramil Keaton, Squirrel White, whoever it is, shorter, it doesn't matter. He'll underthrow it. He gets in his head. It doesn't come natural to him. That's where he's got to settle in. And that's where I think next week against Florida is going to be real important. That's going to be real important. How does he handle adversity? I mean, what if they get down real fast? Because I think Billy Napier and them are going to come out with a different plan and not be as – I'll be interested to see. I don't think they're going to be as conservative as they were last week. That game's tricky next week. I mean, Tennessee just needs to get out of this game healthy against Austin Peay. They do. 4:00 game shouldn't be too bad. But Tennessee, I didn't even see a line on this game. Tennessee is going to win this football game, but they need to work. Joe Milton needs to – I mean, all we heard all fall camp was Joe Milton didn't have an interception. I know I'm talking about hand talent and touch, but Joe Milton needs to start being more consistent. If he overthrows him, hey, let's come back to it. Let's don't be underthrowing it. Let's don't change what we're doing here. It's like a baseball player or a golf player. Hey, we hit one bad shot. Let's don't go change up our swing now. Let's don't go change up our swing. We are who we are. Joe Milton's a solid quarterback. Josh Heupel produces good quarterbacks within this system. Keyword being within the system. But again, Josh Heupel's not paid to go put quarterbacks into the NFL. He's paid to go win games. I think Tennessee, again, I've said it all season. They're to that point now. 8-9 wins should be expected every year for Tennessee. But again, I want to see a little bit more consistency out of Joe Milton. Again, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kick on SEC Network Plus, ESPN Plus. 6 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kick. Interesting game here, I'm telling you. Middle Tennessee State. Remember, They took a loss to Alabama last week in Bryant-Denny Stadium in week 1. Head to Columbia to face the Missouri Tigers. SEC Network plus ESPN plus matchup. This game should probably be a little bit of a, if it wasn't for the Arizona Mississippi State game on SEC Network. I'm going to tell you, it's a trap game. The line's 21.5. I saw Middle Tennessee State, a very aggressive defensive team, a lot of run blitzing. Again, if Brady Cook or Sam Horn cannot take advantage, because they're not going to allow Middle Tennessee State, Rick Stockstill, and Coach Schaefer, the defensive coordinator for Middle Tennessee State, they're not really going to allow you to run on them. Go watch the Alabama game against them. Alabama, I think, got pretty good push for being out man or hatted at times. There wasn't a hat for a hat. I mean, they were blitzing A, B, and C gaps. And it's a gamble at times because if you're blitzing the wrong gap, I mean, that's another one. It's open. But again, Middle Tennessee State did a pretty good job guessing. They're going to give up one-on-one situations and dare you to go take advantage of that. They did last week. Jalen Milroe made them pay a little bit. This week, though, was with Brady Cook and Sam Horn rotating last week. It's going to be interesting. I mean, again, you got it because they have outside weapons. Luther Burden, Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss coming over from Oklahoma. Missouri has the weapons. They're going to have to take advantage because those plays are going to be there. I mean, I don't think they're going to run that well in Middle Tennessee State anyways. I mean, Missouri struggled to get pushed against South Dakota last week. I think Missouri's going to be fine. This game's going to test them. 21.5 is a lot. Oh, and factor in, they could be looking past this game. Sleeper game, because you know who comes to town next week? Kansas State returns the trip that from Missouri going to Manhattan last year, that massive rain, torrential downpour game where Missouri just got embarrassed. There's a big break in it. I think the game took about 5 hours. I mean, Missouri sat there and got their brains beat 42, 49-14, I think, for a long time. Rough game to go through. Kansas State comes to Columbia next week. If you don't think Missouri's got their eye on that, you need to be examined. I'm telling you, it's just the way it works. These guys are looking ahead. They probably just saw Bama kind of manhandle these guys. Middle Tennessee State's a better football team than people think. Defensively, they're going to challenge Missouri. I'm just telling you. Missouri doesn't take advantage of the one-on-one opportunities with their better wide receivers than what Middle's got on the back end. But if Brady Cook or Sam Horn are leaving them or overthrowing guys or underthrowing guys and not taking advantage of it, this game's going to come down in the fourth quarter and you're going to cover 21.5 easily. I'm just telling you. That's just a little sliding under the table if you're wanting some money. Sorry, Missouri fans. I'm just telling you. I'm not betting this, but if you are, you're a brave person, but I'd go Middle Tennessee State minus 21.5. It's going to be a solid game, I think. It's all going to be depending on if Missouri can take advantage of the plays. That will be there in the secondary. They got to take advantage of it. Got to take it. 6 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kick on the SEC Network, ESPN Plus. 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Grambling at LSU on the SEC Network, ESPN Plus. There's a lot of those games this weekend. LSU trying to get back on track. Played Sunday night. Was obviously up 17-14 at half against Florida State. We talked about it on Tuesday's episode. Got physically dominated and bullied. People are going to call me crazy. Oh, it was only a 7-point game in the fourth quarter when Jaden Daniels threw the interception on Malik Neighbors when he slipped, and then they took over when Florida State went to the two-back formation. Yeah, but Florida State was bullying them. Those personal foul penalties on the sideline and stuff added up. It was like a boxing match. Just boom, 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 jab, knockout. Yeah, all right. Yeah, kind of a shot below the belt. Refs breaking it up. That's the personal foul. But you know what? It adds up. LSU knew in their head, like, dang, dude, this team's fast and they're physical. Kind of look like some old Florida State teams. I'm not ready to crown Florida State national championship. I mean, I have them in my playoffs. They should win the ACC. But that's conversation for another day. LSU gets to go redeem themselves before a trip to Starkville next week against Mississippi State, against Grambling, team they're familiar with. There'll be a ton of people in that stands just for the halftime show. But LSU, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, they should get this right. LSU just doesn't need to keep mounting up. What's scary in these games for a team like LSU, if I'm an LSU fan, is mounting up defensive injuries. That's what scares me. Again, if they get any injuries on the interior, Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, 18, who was disruptive as hell against Florida State, and then Jordan Jefferson, the West Virginians here, they're in trouble. They get any injuries in the back end, they're in trouble. They don't have a good secondary as it is. Not SEC championship caliber or college football playoff caliber secondary. People could be like, they're not a bad team, Dave. When I say, I mean, LSU, man, I mean, there's some things I don't know that can be fixed. I'm not saying they're a bad team. They're going to be 9-3. I think they're a 9-3 team. I said that going into the season. I told you we're going down a rabbit hole here a little bit, but I would be shocked if LSU doesn't lose one of these road games at Ole Miss, at Mississippi State, or at Missouri. Call me crazy. But again, this is a game LSU just needs to get in, get their corrections right, and get healthy before they head to Starkville next week. 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, kickoff. McNeese, formerly known as McNeese State, the Cowboys heading to the Swamp, Gainesville on ESPNU. Florida trying to get back in the win column after a tough one against Utah. It feels like Florida hadn't played in forever. I mean, that was last Thursday. It was a week ago tonight. But it seems like a lot has happened. That Labor Day weekend, week one, always just, it's a lot. It's Thursday through Monday. It's awesome, but it's just a lot. It feels like so many games happen. And they did a lot of it happen at once. But Florida, similar to LSU, needs to get back, get their corrections right, get Graham Mertz submerged into the system, get him some simple throws. Try to develop guys like Eugene Wilson, a young cat on the outside. He needs to go help you win if Florida's going to try to go get bowl eligible this year. As crazy as that sounds, I think 6 is going to be tough to get to with that schedule. It's going to be really tough to get to. McNeese State, not very good. I think they got beat by 18-20 last week when I was looking at it earlier in the week to Tarleton State, who's a solid FCS program. But again, Florida should win this game. Watch for the Florida offensive line here. If they can't get much push against McNeese State, it's not good. It's not good. It'd be similar to Vanderbilt. It'd be similar to a Vanderbilt Commodore type thing where they're struggling to get some push against Alabama A&M in the first half. And that's why I'm concerned with Vandy now, especially at 3.5 over team win total I put in at the beginning of the year. But Florida, this is a get-back right game before a big one next week. Obviously, we'll talk about it next week. Florida, 6.5-point underdog going into it as of this moment before we play week 2. With Tennessee coming into the Swamp, Florida's going to be like a cage dog back into a corner, man. If they don't have to go win the Tennessee game next week, but they have to look competitive. And Vegas obviously thinks this game's going to be competitive. Florida and their fans in their backyard with their backs against the wall. I think Billy Napier's fighting for the season here. You lose this game, you look bad, you may lose the team. So this week, you just need to focus on the corrections, getting guys more comfortable, and again, kind of like LSU, staying healthy. 6. We'll get to this one. We're going to skip that one. And then 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time kickoff. This is an interesting one, kind of a sneaky one. Another SEC Network plus ESPN plus game. Furman, the Paladins, heading to, I guess you'd say, in-state rival. South Carolina fans will laugh at me and boo me off the stage for that. But South Carolina at Old Willie B, season opener at Williams-Brice Stadium, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time zone. Man, was Shane Beamer on one this week. I feel like he was attacking everybody. He was attacking the linesmen for not eating their hot dogs fast enough at halftime against North Carolina this week. He called them out. He said the only thing that was embarrassing from last week in his post-game press conference was how long it took the linesmen to get out and the stick guys to get out after finishing their hot dogs. I mean, I thought the 9 sacks were pretty embarrassing against the North Carolina defensive line that was not very good. And minus 2 yards rushing. That was pretty embarrassing too. But again, the Furman Paladins were in a unique system. South Carolina's going to have a bunch of guys out. I mean, I'm not going to read everything. They have a lot of guys out in this game. Be careful. I'm just saying, they go to Athens next week. Right now, I don't know why they'd be looking forward to that game. That's, Georgia's defensive line versus South Carolina's offensive line after the 9 sacks and averaging negative 2 yards against one of the worst defensive fronts in the country last year in North Carolina. No offense, they got better. It could be trouble next week, but they have to get it right here. Furman, I feel like Shane Beamer's already kind of previewed a little bit. This isn't going to be the prettiest game in the world. He's already kind of stated, hey, a lot of guys are out. Furman's a solid football team. And it is what it is. And I haven't seen a line on this one either. South Carolina, again, I don't think you're really able to tell a lot if they've improved on the offensive line against Furman. I mean, they're not going to see that. It's going to be night and day difference from what they see this week. It's going to be one on one end of the spectrum to the other against Georgia next week. Maybe one of the bigger gaps I've seen in 1 week in a long time, between 1 week in a long, long time. But God, man, if South Carolina does not look good in this game, the offensive line struggles to get pushers, giving up sacks. Woo! It could be bad. It'd be worst case scenario. That could be worst case scenario. But they should handle business. I'm not ready to say there's going to be an upset alert. But if this game's closer later in the third or in the fourth, just telling you, it would not overly shock me with that one. But those are the games before we get in here and start reviewing. Obviously, we're going to get to the Ole Miss at Tulane game, Texas A&M Miami game. Remember, we got Carter coming on from 247 from the GigEm 247 from 247 Sports, CBS Sports, to come talk a little Miami, Texas A&M. We also got Texas, Alabama we're going to talk about right when he gets off. And we got Arizona, Mississippi State, and we got Auburn, Cal as well. Let's get the share off the screen here. So Carter should be joining us here in a minute. But you know what? We're going to move up. We're going to move up the old – scroll down. Making Money Thursday. Let's push it up. All right. It's time, guys. We got about 4-5 minutes before we get Carter in here. So let's go. Money Making Thursday. Here we go. 7-0. Here we go. Colorado. We're leading it off, baby. I was wrong about them last week, but I'm taking them this week. -3. Give me the Buffs against Nebraska at home. It's going to be probably one of the more raucous environments in Boulder since probably the 90s. Probably since the 90s when they were really good with guys like Rashid Salam and guys like Cordell Stewart, guys like that. I like Colorado here. Was not impressed with Nebraska against Minnesota last week. I think Colorado covers this one. Now, will they be sleepwalking? I've thought about that, but also at the same time, Boulder's going to be rocking, dude. I mean, Prime is the king marketer. Does he talk a little too much? Sure, that's his personality. I like Colorado this week. -3 against Nebraska. Not overly impressed with Nebraska, but I like Colorado. Texas A&M, -4.5 at Miami. Well, I mean, I'll give you my preview, but let's get into the picture now. Texas A&M -4.5 at Miami. I like the Aggies here. I like the Aggies here. I'm really not concerned about the offense. I think they're gonna come out arrogant. They're going to come out arrogant this week. I think you're going to really see why Texas A&M is going to be really good on offense this year. It starts outside with the freak shows they have at wide receiver. And I think Connor Weigman is a gamer, a guy who can throw off different platforms, different arm angles. He's not going to be the guy that goes wows you at practice if you just walk out there. But he's a guy that when the lights turn on, he's a football player, man. He's going to go make plays that you just can't emulate in practice. But I like the Aggies. I'm not going to ruin that one for you. -4.5 there. Here's another random game that I like. Maybe some insider trading here. UConn +3.5 over Georgia State. Give me Jim Mora and the boys, baby. Give me the Huskies +3.5. This one right here is my Great White Buffalo guarantee of the week. Great White Buffalo guarantee of the week is UConn +3.5 over Georgia State. Give it to me, man. Why is UConn getting points in this game? They're the better football team. I think UConn covers this easy. Remember, the Great White Buffalo guarantee of the week. UConn, the Huskies +3.5 over Georgia State. Alabama. We'll preview. I'm not going to go too much in that one. But give me the -7.5 versus Texas. Give me the -7.5 versus Texas. I think Alabama, this is one of those few games where Bryant-Denny Stadium, and again, we'll get into it, comes alive. I like the Tide here. Give me -7.5. Next one, UTSA -11. I like them against Texas State. I think they're going to cover double digits. Texas State coming off a big win against Baylor. I think G.J. Kinney and the boys who I worked with, he was the offensive coordinator at UCF when I was there. I think they come in sleepwalking a little bit. I think Jeff Traylor and UTSA are going to be pissed off after their loss to Houston last week, a game they think they should have won. I think they go make a statement this week. I think they easily cover this one. This was almost the Great White Buffalo guarantee of the week as well. I like UTSA Roadrunners -11. And then Auburn Cal. There's going to be a lot of points scored in the old Pac-12 after dark late night kickoff between Auburn and Cal. I like what Auburn's doing on offense. Cal, Jake Spavital, new OC. Got a pretty good running back in Ott. Quarterback situation up in the air with Sam Jackson potentially being out. Who knows how that goes? Does Ben Finley become a full-time guy? Is he the guy for him in this game? I think that's probably what it's leaning toward. But I like the over in this. Over 54.5, Auburn Cal. I think the over hits here. Feel pretty confident in that one. A lot of points scored in that late night matchup in the Bay. And then Ole Miss Tulane. We're going to go back to the over-under. I've been very successful in those. Just telling you, heads up. Over 60. There's going to be a lot of points scored. Ole Miss going to put up a lot of points on Tulane. Tulane's best defender, their linebacker, is going to be out in this game. I believe it's Platt. Corey Platt will be out in this game. And then Tulane, I think Ole Miss has a lot of holes on that defense. I know they only gave up 7 points to Mercer last week, but if you go back and watch the game, Some of it's scheme with Pete Golden, but also there's not a lot of great personnel in that back end. It's not a deep group. I think Tulane's going to get theirs too, but I think it also overall just hits the over at 62.5. So we'll circle back, but just the money-making Thursday, 7-0 picks right here, baby. Colorado -3 against Nebraska. Texas A&M -4.5 at Miami. My Great White Buffalo guarantee of the week here. UConn +3.5 over Georgia State. Alabama -7.5 versus Texas. UTSA and Jeff Traylor and the boys getting some revenge against Texas State, -11. Auburn Cal over 54. Ole Miss Tulane over 62.5. But here we go, baby. Let's get Carter in here. Carter, what's going on, baby?
Hey, nothing much, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem, but hey, before we get on, we pronounce the last name, is it Karels?
Karels.
All right, so everybody, we talked about it at the beginning of the show. We have Carter Karels coming on from 247 Sports, specifically GigEm 247. They do a great job over there on that website. That's what I get a lot of my stuff from there when I go read up on Texas A&M. But again, joining us, the big matchup, 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, Texas A&M at Miami. Carter, what are the thoughts through one game, one spring ball, one fall camp down in Aggie land right now?
There's a lot of optimism compared to where they were feeling, I guess, in January, right? I think December, January of last year, it couldn't have been more negative and just down. But you've seen A&M make a lot of changes since last season, whether it's getting some of the bad apples out of the program that had kind of permeated the culture here, or, the offensive play calling, turning to Bobby Petrino, DJ Durkin being more involved coaching the linebackers this season. So you've seen these changes. You also saw, pretty young team last year. They brought back everybody but 3 starters. They were pretty banged up last year as well. They entered this season a lot more healthy. So a lot more optimism. And they came into the New Mexico game where it's kind of like, well, we'll see if it actually plays out the way we think it might. And I think a lot of Aggie fans took a lot of positives from that game, 52-10 against New Mexico. It's New Mexico. It's not like it's this world beater or anything. But the offense scored 5 touchdowns in its first 5 drives. The defense held them under 100 yards. And for the most part, it's a pretty clean game outside the beginning of the second half. So I think you had a lot of positives to take away from it for sure.
No, absolutely. If you go back and watch the games, like you said, I've seen you post stuff on Twitter all day today. You can tell the offense is, the term that came to my mind, a little bit more arrogant in a good way.
Right.
If that makes sense a little bit.
Right. You're talking about the
move. Yeah, offense. I thought they looked more aggressive. It looked like really a lot of Bobby Petrino stuff, obviously from Missouri State and Arkansas, but it just looked a little bit more arrogant. I think Connor Weidman, just from talking to guys in that building, he's more of just a game. I mean, as you probably heard, I'm sure, just more of a gamer. Like, not going to come off as a great practice player, but some 7-on-7 settings, 1-on-1 settings could come off a little bit. But the guy can just throw off different platforms, has a strong arm to throw it to the other hash across the field, stuff like that. I saw you were mentioning that kind of stuff on social media today. But what is the feel for this specific game? I was looking around. Do you feel like this game or the Arkansas game in about 2 weeks is kind of the 3 weeks is kind of the must win? Arkansas, Auburn kind of game. What's kind of the feel? Is there like in Aggie land, is there kind of like hey man, we need to go win this game and look good doing it? It's just interesting. I think it's kind of a springboard game for both Miami and Texas A&M potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you ask any A&M fan, they'd say every game's a must win. But Miami, just because it's the first big game coming up, I think it's bigger for now, just because this is a team that's going up against another team that also entered the season with a lot of questions. And I think if A&M were to spiral and things were to not go very well, it would not give you a lot of confidence that, I mean, you could argue Miami might be like the 6th best team on the schedule. So somewhere around that range, 5th, 6th best team. So if you lose against the 5th or 6th best team on your schedule, that is not a good sign of what's to come. And, they're also coming off of a 6-game road losing streak. They haven't won a road game since 2021. So they lose another road game. You're thinking, well, man, how are they going to beat Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee? Those are some of the other road games that they're going to be facing this year. But I just think going into this game, like I mentioned this, but last year versus this year is so much different for both teams. I've talked about A&M for Miami having two new coordinators, having two receivers that weren't in the game last year. Restrepo was, I believe, hurt. His foot was hurt before that game, didn't play. I don't think Colby Young was really a big contributor at that point. They got a new freshman running back that's pretty good, Mark Fletcher. Just a lot of differences. And Tyler Van Dyke, I mean, what to expect from him was really good in 2021, was pretty bad in 2022. Which one is it? What are we going to see? And so there's kind of a lot of mystery going into this game, and I think that's why a lot of questions need to be answered in this one.
No, absolutely. It's like you said, you almost can throw that film out. That low-scoring affair, like you said, you got two different coordinators on Miami's side. Obviously, a different coordinator on A&M side, on the offensive side of the ball. It's calling it now. So it's like you said, new players, Restrepo's out. But outside, just from let's hone in on matchup situations here. Outside of the A&M's wide receivers versus Miami's secondary, what is another matchup that you think Texas A&M can go take advantage of in this game?
Good question. That was going to be number one for me. I'd say number two, I want to see what this defensive line does, because I felt like a lot of Miami fans will tell you that their offensive line's better this year, that they can establish the run, and that's kind of maybe going to be their bread and butter. I know Tyler Van Dyke's obviously going to be a big part too, but this defensive line for A&M just taking – a lot of these guys taking a second-year jump, right? Walter Nolan was somebody who really flashed against New Mexico, just was all over the place, really. McKinley Jackson was another guy who, wasn't very healthy last year, played 7 or 8 games. When he played, he was great, but when he didn't play, it really showed with this defense. I thought him and Walter Nolan were phenomenal against New Mexico in a way that I think will translate. Edgerrin Cooper at linebacker is another guy who I just thought he looked really instinctive, really fast, really aggressive, just seemed to, I think for him, he just hasn't really had the instincts, the feel. He's always had kind of the ability. It's just sort of reading and reacting. And he showed that he had made that growth against New Mexico. We'll see how it translates. But this defensive line is just so loaded with talent, former 4- and 5-star guys. I mean, I looked at the snaps. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, who was a former 5-star recruit, he had the 12th most snaps on the defensive line last week. And when he came into the game, he absolutely destroyed the center for New Mexico. Just completely drove him back 5 yards. And so I think it's a mismatch, almost every matchup. I think this D-line can take over games. And I think especially against the run is where you're going to see that improvement with them this year.
No, I'm with you. I like the McKinley Jackson matchup versus Miami center Matt Lee. I do. I think it's a good. I think it's going to be in favor of the Aggies. Like you said, I'm familiar with Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy as well. Lakeland kid. We were recruiting him when I was at UCF. But on the flip side of that here, Carter, if you had to say there was a matchup the Hurricanes could exploit with the Aggies, where would that come in?
I would say cornerback, secondary. I think you saw a lot of positives from Josh DeBerry, the Boston College transfer, in game one. I mean, I say a lot of positives. It was really positive. He was kind of everywhere in that game.
He was my next question. I was going to go on him, but you're hitting on him right now.
Yeah. But I still think we got to see him do it against great competition. He was primarily a nickel at Boston College. He's flipping to the outside. I think he showed a lot of great things as a tackler and run support. He blitzed and got a sack on one play. We saw him get an interception and a pass breakup, but just against these better receivers, the Colby Youngs of the world, the Xavier Restrepos of the world, how are these corners gonna hold up? Tyreek Chappell's another question for me. He was good in that number 2 role last year behind Jalen Jones. But how will he look? Can he be a number 1 corner? Can he be all SEC level? I think he's talented. I think he can get handsy sometimes. I think he can get lost in coverage sometimes. So I don't know if the consistency is always there. Not like he's a super lockdown guy. So
Yeah.
I want to see how. I mean, Colby Young looked pretty dang good in that first game. I want to see how that translates in this next game for sure.
Here again with Carter Karels from 247 Sports, GigEm 247. Carl, last question. We'll get you out of here. Appreciate you joining us. What will we be saying about Texas A&M come Sunday morning? The sun rises on Sunday. What are we saying?
I think people are going to start paying attention to this team. They're going to start paying attention to the offense. It's really funny. I mean, a lot of people, I've been very optimistic since this New Mexico game and really since preseason camp, just based off what I've seen, what I've heard. And it's not just a New Mexico sample size. Connor Wigman showed against LSU and Ole Miss last year that he is more than capable of being a great quarterback. And then this receiving core has been great too. And Bobby Petrino has the track record. So it's not like a one-game sample size to me. But I think finally doing it against competition that is considered, at least decent or at least good, I think that's going to start to, catch people's attention. If this team can put up, in the 30s in points like I think they will, at least, then I think people will pay attention to that and say, well, okay, this might be one of the better offenses in the SEC.
Absolutely. Well, Carter, I appreciate you getting on, guys. If you don't already follow him, go follow him at Carter Karels. Am I correct there, Carter? Is the Twitter handle? Go follow him. A lot of great stuff on 247 at GigEm 247. Carter, you heading to 305 this weekend?
I sure am. I can't wait, man.
All right, brother. All right, man. Well, hey, stay off South Beach for me. If you do, go have a drink for me, man. But I appreciate you hopping on, man. You have a great week and be safe out there.
You too, man. Appreciate it.
See you, bud. All right, guys, there. Carter Karels. Remember, 247. Go give him that follow at Carter Karels. 247 GigEm. GigEm 247. They do a fantastic job covering the Aggies. I think Jeff Tarpley. Also, if you're interested in following some other A&M stuff, Tex Aggies is another good place to go to as well. A&M fans listening, I'm sure you already know that as well. But it's prediction time, guys. It is officially prediction time. We've already gone through a lot of the SEC, but we got 5 real games to cover. Leading off, Ole Miss at Tulane, 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ABC. The Rebs, Ole Miss is currently favored by 7.5. This is the return trip from, I think, 2021. That was just an epic downpour in Knoxford. But here, we're setting the tone for you here. I don't really feel like we learned a lot from the Rebs against Week 1 against Mercer. I thought there were some holes defensively they need to shore up. But Tulane took me by surprise with their win against South Alabama. And the Green Wave were better than I thought, and really what anyone thought. This game has been circled on non-conference game of the year for both teams. Ole Miss fans and their powder blue, I think Ole Miss is going with the all-white, icy white drip. But Ole Miss, I think the fans are going to take over New Orleans, Ullman Stadium. Ole Miss should expect to win this game. If they don't, it's not going to be good. The pressure's going to be turned up on Lane real quick, so we still got a lot to go. We still got a lot of games to go. Not this. If they don't win this game, Ole Miss is probably in trouble. And the defense is in a lot worse shape than what we even anticipated. But Tulane, their main goal, their main objective, they're still trying to go prove they're the best Group of 5 team, and they can go compete with some of the best. I mean, if they win this game against Ole Miss, I mean, it's two out of your last 3 wins against, 3 games in a row. I mean, USC, South Alabama's a good football team too, and then Ole Miss. But where this game will be won, I think it's going to be the Ole Miss offense. The Reb offense is going to be too much for Tulane. I would be absolutely shocked if Ole Miss turns the ball over 5 times like South Alabama did last week. That's ultimately what did South Alabama in 5 turnovers. While South Alabama is a good offense, it doesn't have the explosive weapons like Ole Miss is going to have. It's just a different animal with Lane Kiffin in that offense. Guys like Trey Harris, Louisiana Tech transfer, and Quinshon Judkins are due for big games here. They're due for big games here. But if they gave Quinshon Judkins 15 carries against Mercer, what are they going to give him this game? Again, the depth of Ole Miss's running back rooms concern me. Will they ride in this game? I think so. Also, I mentioned earlier, Tulane's best linebacker, Corey Platt, will be out this game. He was their leading tackler. That's going to be a massive advantage for Ole Miss. I've stated before, this is one of the few SEC games heading into the season that I was most confident in. Came in at number 2, I believe, if I'm correctly, just after the South Carolina-Tennessee game. But if Ole Miss takes care of the football, this will be a classic game under Lane Kiffin where they just outscore their opponent. Prediction. Give me Ole Miss 42-38. If you want to keep an eye on anything, Ole Miss fans, it's keep an eye on the defense. You'll have a better idea of this Ole Miss defense, this Rebel defense in general, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening after this game. It's Chris Pratt, that quarterback for Tulane and the boys. I've seen him in person. He's a good player. But again, Ole Miss should be able to handle this. I'm not saying that you're not going to give up some plays, but be real careful with that Ole Miss D. Another thing to keep on that I'm on, how many carries Quinshon Judkins gets? Because does Lane Kiffin start putting a lot of miles on those tires early in the season? But back to the game, but I think this game is going to be close back and forth for about a half. Even if Tulane was fully healthy and Platt was playing on defense, Ole Miss would ultimately be too much for a Greenway defense. The Rebs start to separate in the second half and run all the way to the French Quarter for some celebratory, beignets, and a solid non-conference win that gets the Rebs to 2-0 at the start of this 2023 campaign. Rebs 42-28. Heading right into Starkville, Ole Miss's big rival, baby. Arizona at Mississippi State, 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, SEC Network. Mississippi State currently favored by 9.5. We're setting the tone for you here with this one. Look, a lot of people, I think, in the Southeast are not going to be overly familiar with Arizona. Mississippi State fans will, just because they played in Tucson last year. Game was kind of back and forth. State, I think, ended up winning by about 14. But this is a solid football team. I think Arizona's a solid football team, is what I'm talking about. This is a 6-7 win team here, guys. Just accept they have a really good quarterback in Jaden DeLaura. He's going to make some plays. He's going to make some plays. Just accept it. But he's also likely to turn it over a little bit at times, too, if pressured. I think Arizona's going to be a good football team this year. 6-7 wins. This is Jed Fish's third season in Tucson. Came over. He was the quarterback's coach for New England before he got the job in Tucson. Third season, they brought in a lot of transfers on defense. Defensively, they got some question marks, but they brought a lot of transfers on defense to shore that up. I was watching him the other day. Bill Norton, Georgia fans will be familiar with, former SEC guy, Memphis guy, looked pretty good defensive to up front against who they played. Northern Colorado, Northern Arizona. I know Northern Arizona. They were controlling that line of scrimmage. Mississippi State, key for the Dogs here. They got to start a lot faster than they did last week. I mean, it was 10-7 against Southeastern late in the first half. It may even be tied at half. I forget about that. I watched so many games this week. It's a very interesting game, in my opinion. State's going to have to start fast, but because I think Arizona's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, heading into year 3 with Jed Fish, if they can go pick up a road win at an SEC school, may get Jed Fish an extension, especially if he goes to a bowl game. And again, I think the Pac-12, we're going to talk Auburn Cal here in a bit. From top to bottom, it may be there may have the most parity in college football. The Pac-12, the last year of the Pac-12, from top to bottom may have the most parity in the league. Top heavy, no, but from top to bottom, I'm telling you, Cal and Arizona are improved teams. From a state perspective, this would be a massive first win for Zach Arnett, no matter how many draw it up. If you go and dominate this game, woo, it's going to be a lot of people. Uncle Mo. If you don't know Uncle Mo Minham is his full name, is going to be fully with Mississippi State as LSU comes to town next week. But they need to focus on the task at hand because it's a sneaky bunch with a very good quarterback in Jaden DeLaura. Night game under the lights, wide out at Davis Way Stadium. Where this game will be won, here it is. State's front seven. The offense is going to bounce back to an extent in this game. I think Kevin Barbe is going to have a good plan. I think Arizona State still has some holes that Will Rogers and Jaquavius Marks and the boys can take advantage of. The defensive front seven for State, though, they're going to have to control Jaden DeLaura, get in his face, force some turnovers. And I'm telling you, Arizona is going to try to get some mismatch advantages against Mississippi State's inside linebacker, specifically Jet Johnson. If you go watch the game against Southeastern, Mississippi State's linebackers look slow. Their inside backers look slow. I think an NFL guy like Jed Fish is going to be able to see that with a talented quarterback, Jaden DeLaura. Look for some angle routes, man. Look for some angle routes there. Look for some crossers, mesh concepts. Arizona is going to try to get some running backs in some one-on-one situations with the linebacker, specifically Jet Johnson. Like I said, speed is a concern for Mississippi State at the linebacker position. However, State does have the advantage in the trenches, hands down. One thing that needs to improve is just keeping containment on the edges. Last week, some of those Lions, Southeastern Lions, got to the edge of Mississippi State. I noticed that when watching the film. But the defensive line, I think, is going to have to carry the load in this game for Mississippi State. But prediction, I think it's going to be a close one. Remember, Mississippi State favored by 9.5 in this one. I was close to taking Arizona, taking the points. I think it's going to be close. Mississippi State 32, Arizona 28. This game's going to be closer than people think. Like I keep mentioning, Arizona's going to be a better football team. Then we're going to look up in December, and they're going to have they're going to be 6-7 wins. We're going to be looking at what bowl game they're going to. Something like the Arizona Bowl. But at the end of the day, I think this is a very intriguing game that really nobody's talking about in the country. And they really shouldn't, but regionally and from a standpoint, it's a big win for Zach. This is a big game for both teams. Zach Arnett needs to get off to a good start against his first Power 5 team in non-conference play. And this is a big opportunity for Jedd Fisch and his Arizona team. If you don't think they know that going in, there'll be a hungry bunch. But State's going to start faster this week on offense and will ultimately outlast the Jaden DeLauro-led Arizona team. Arizona will make some plays offensively, but the State defensive line ultimately takes over the game late. And with the guys on the defensive line from Mississippi State like Jaden Crumedy, Demonte Russell, they will be the difference up front. Give me Mississippi State in a close one, 32-28. Next, we're going a little Pac-12 after dark. Auburn at Cal in the Bay Area. Berkeley, baby. 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN. This game will come on right after the Alabama-Texas game. Auburn is currently favored by 6.5. Setting the tone for you in this one. Cal coming in after a 1-0, after a solid win on the road against North Texas. Justin Wilcox, like he's been at Cal now for a long time, had to get something going on offense. Really struggled on offense last year in 2022. You know who he brought back? The guy he had to go, his biggest candidate to get the head coaching job at Cal, Jake Spavital. Remember Jake Spavital coming back for another tenure as the offensive coordinator at Cal. He was the offensive coordinator in 2016, went and got the job at Texas State. Now he's back. Now he's back at Cal. The Bears, better football team this year. Go watch them against the Mean Green against North Texas last week. You can tell this game is going to present a unique challenge to Auburn. Just for listening to Hugh Freeze all week, you can tell Auburn under him they're not going to go schedule many more West Coast games. You can tell he thinks this is going to affect his team. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair, though, because as good as Auburn looked offensively last week, there were a lot of holes in that Auburn defense, that Ron Roberts defense. They got to get that figured out. Jake Spavital, a good offensive mind, he's going to find those holes and exploit them at least every now and then. But big question mark here is quarterback, TCU transfer for Cal, Sam Jackson is questionable with what looks like a shoulder injury. Wilcox didn't really go specifically. Ben Finley picked up last week, the NC State transfer. I think you're going to see him in this game. I think you're going to see him look solid against North Texas. But this is a cross-country road trip. Can be overanalyzed at times, but it's real. I mean, just depending how early you get out there. I mean, Florida decided, I think they spent like a day in Dallas, then they went to Salt Lake City. I think Auburn's going tonight after their practice, heading over to Cali. I mean, again, it's a late night. It's a long time. Again, we never went West Coast, but when I was on staff at A&M with Jimbo Fisher, it's a Jimbo Fisher thing. When he was at Florida State, now they do it at A&M. They travel 2 nights ahead. They'll practice, eat dinner, take a late flight to wherever they're going, and they're there for a while. So if you play at night on Saturday, it's almost 2 full days. A lot of your guys are sitting there. That can affect some college kids, just especially with the attention spans of guys now. You got to be able to entertain your guys. Don't let them peak too early, but you also still need to get them locked in. That could be a challenge. It's a little overanalyzed at times, but it's also a real thing. And like I said, I think Auburn's going to be challenged this game. And if they turn the ball over and give up some explosive plays on defense, they could easily lose this game because I think Cal's that improved. I think Cal is a better football team this year. But where this game will be won, it's Auburn's front seven versus Cal's offensive line. I mean, Cal's offensive line was poor last season. But again, in the first game against the Mean Green, they put up a cool 347 on the ground. And a lot of that had to do with, I know Auburn knows about him, but running back Jaden Ott, very good player, ran all over North Texas last week. Auburn's defensive line needs to show out here. I know it's a ceiling, it's a low ceiling group, but while Cal's improved, I mean, let's be honest, they're improved some. You're going to see much better offensive lines later on in your schedule if you're Auburn. So if you go and struggle, give up 175, 200 rushing yards to this Cal team, smell trouble for Auburn down the road defensively. This is a good litmus test for Auburn here. It's a good litmus test. This is a team you should have success, though, if you're Auburn, stopping the run. Guys like Jason Jones, Oregon transfer, Justin Rogers, the Kentucky transfer on the interior for Auburn, Marcus Harris, a Kansas transfer, and Elijah McAllister. Those guys need to have big days. Those 4 guys need to have big days against this Cal front. But an inside linebacker, Austin Keys, Ole Miss transfer is already down. Auburn has the better personnel, though. I just read you some of those names. They're better than what Cal's putting on that offensive line. This is the first opportunity for Auburn to go show that this run defense, who gave up 170 yards or more in 6 games last year on the ground, is improved. This is their first real test to go improve. And if it doesn't look good, like I said, Cal's rushing for 175, 200 yards, smells trouble for Auburn down the road because they're going to be facing, like I said, better offensive lines. throughout the SEC schedule. But prediction time. I think another close one, man. I'm telling you. I think the Pac-12 is deeper at the bottom this year. Auburn 35, Cal 31. I actually think it's going to be an Auburn game. They just need to survive this game. I'm not going to make too big of a judgment on my end on this one as long as Auburn just wins this. This is a survive game. This is a game you could see Auburn not looking great in this week 2. And then in like week 10, Auburn's maybe going for their 7th or 8th win. And you're like, man, remember how bad they looked against Cal? Remember how bad they looked in the secondary? Or, man, Peyton Thorne had some turnovers there. They didn't really use Robbie Ashford correctly like they thought. Auburn's going to be a different team, but I think this is a game they just need to survive, get to 2-0. I think it's a weird game. Cal's improved, cross-country road trip. I just want to see this Auburn front 7 step up and show improvement in the run game. I like both offenses to come alive at some point, even with quarterback Sam Jackson being potentially out for Cal. Auburn makes a couple of plays late and wins in the Pac-12 after dark matchup in the Bay Area. Auburn 35, Cal 31. Remember, I took this one too. I took this one is in one of the Mach 10 sports, Make It Rain Thursday, the over. We took the over in this one. We took the over in this one at 54.5. 54.5, but I do like Auburn making a couple plays down the stretch to win this game. Now we're getting into some of the 2 real matchups here. We just talked to Carter Karels over there at 247 Sports with GigEm 247. He liked the Aggies. You can tell I like the Aggies. But let's get to it. Texas A&M at Miami, 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ABC. Texas A&M favored by 4.5. Remember, that was some of my money making Thursday too. I took the Aggies minus 4.5. But let's set the tone here for you. This has a potential to be a tone setter, no pun, for both teams. Heading into the rest of the season through Texas A&M throughout their SEC schedule, Miami through the ACC schedule. It's now or never, though, specifically for Texas A&M. At least that's what I've been told. For Miami, Mario Cristobal and the boys have to bounce back from a disappointing first season. If A&M loses this game, though, cue their critics, and I do think that would be well-deserved. If they go and A&M doesn't look improved, the critics will be – that'll be fair for people to go critique A&M. A&M needs to win this game. It's a little similar to the Ole Miss Tulane game. A&M should go win this game, just like Ole Miss should go to New Orleans and beat Tulane. Both those teams are kind of in the same boat this week to me. I do think A&M is going to go make a statement, at least offensively, though. I love the offense this year. Just an arrogant offense, man. I like it. Again, not worried about A&M on offense. Probably the best wide receiver room in the league. Evan Stewart, Noah Thomas, Moose Muhammad, guys like that. I'm just a little bit worried about the defense. Still have some concerns with the defense. And I think Miami gets their fair share of explosive plays as well. Tyler Van Dyke, a lot more comfortable in new OC Shannon Dawson's system. Remember, we just talked to Carter. It's tough to go back and watch that Miami Texas A&M game last year, the low scoring affair. Miami's got 2 different coordinators, new players. Josh Gaddis, the offensive coordinator, couldn't get it done last year. Supplement Shannon Dawson, the new OC this year, coming over from Houston. Kevin Steele is now on, and now Lance Guidry is in the new DC from there. So it's tough to go back and watch that game. But again, I think Tyler Van Dyke looks a lot better in Shannon Dawson's system from going back and watching that game in their first game. It looked a lot more. Looked like he was much more comfortable in a Rhett Lashley type system, and that's what Shannon Dawson's running here. And we'll talk about that from some kind of standpoint. But I also want to see from a middle standpoint, from a chip on their shoulder standpoint, who has it more out of these 2 games. Traditionally, Miami, especially, is a team that talks a lot. Jimbo's team's usually a team with a lot of edge with them. Does someone come out with an edge advantage? I kind of want to see A&M be a little nasty in this game. But where will this game be won? Let's lock you in here. It's the A&M secondary, man. This game's going to come down to A&M's ability to keep things in front of them defensively. Remember, I'm not worried about A&M's offense. I love what they're doing on offense right now. But it's going to be about A&M keeping things in front of them defensively. Shannon Dawson, the new OC Miami we just talked about, came over from Houston. His offensive system's based on quick reads and getting the ball out quick. Think RPO, air raid type system. The system doesn't put a lot of stress on quarterbacks or offensive lines because they get the ball out quick. They do not take a lot of deep shots, but they tend to pick up a lot of yards. If you go watch their games at Houston and when times he was at West Virginia with Dana Holgerson, they get a lot of yards after the catch with secondaries not communicating and passing things over defensively, like a lot of short underneath mesh stuff, a lot of pick rub routes, just short, easy throws. For A&M, the ability to get off blocks in the perimeter when they throw screens will be critical. If you go back and watch the New Mexico Texas A&M game, A&M struggled passing off defenders at times. That concerns me a little bit defensively in this game for them. It does. But prediction time, I'm high on A&M going into the year. I had them 10-2. They're going to have a chance to go win the SEC West towards the end of the year. They'll be in that conference. If there was a year for A&M to compete in the SEC West, it's this year. It's this year. Never been more open. But I think A&M goes in and gets a 38-24 win. I think this A&M offense, I keep saying it's going to be an arrogant bunch in this game, and I'm all for it. Another key matchup to watch offensively for the Aggies, though, will be how do their running backs pass protect this week. A&M is going to have a bunch of one-on-one opportunities downfield. And I'll be honest, I like guys like Evan Stewart, Noah Thomas, Moose Muhammad. We mentioned them earlier against most secondaries. That includes a lot of SEC secondaries. The opportunities are going to be there for Connor Wigman early and often. And connecting on a couple of these early shots will tell us. Connecting on a couple of these early deep shots for Connor Wigman is going to tell us if this thing's going to be close, or does A&M pull away maybe early or pull away early in the second half. I think what A&M looks like from a vertical passing game early is going to tell us a lot about this game. I like the Aggies to come out hot. Don't have a concern about the offense. I'm concerned about the defense, passing some things off, but I ultimately think they get enough stops to get the win. A&M pulls away in the second half, 38-24 Aggies down at Miami at Hard Rock Stadium. And then finally, the one you've been waiting on, the big one. Probably one of the more hyped up offseason matchups in a while. I mean, because I think people legitimately think Texas have a shot to go beat Alabama. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I picked Alabama. Or I picked Texas to beat Alabama in this heading into my preseason pick. I did. I had Alabama finishing 10-2, winning the SEC West. Their two losses to Texas and Texas A&M, both Texas schools. You'll find out here in a minute if that's changed a little bit, but let's get to it. Texas at Alabama, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kickoff on ESPN. Alabama favored by 7.5. Let's set the tone for you. Who has the most pressure on them? Alabama or Texas? This was something I wanted to ask Leah, but again, she's under the weather. But I think it's Texas. This is the best Texas team that Sark has, at least on paper, personnel-wise, especially on the defensive line. They have enough weapons on the outside to go beat most. I think the pressure is on Texas. I'll be honest with you. I really don't even think it's that close. People are like, no, it's Alabama. No, it's Texas. It's now or never, because people know this is Sark's best team. They know this is his best team. But then you also got to factor in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and Alabama fans haven't felt threatened a lot over the past 17 years. But once or twice every 2 or 3 years, there's a massive home game where the usual golf clap crowd turns into a full-on rage against the machine type atmosphere. I think this is one of those games. I think the crowd's going to have a major impact in this one. Can Quinn Ewers go in and get the biggest victory of his life? Can the Texas quarterback, former Ohio State transfer, Dallas native Quinn Ewers, go in and get the biggest win of his life? I mean, here's a stat for you right here. The only quarterbacks, there's only 5 of them, since 2008 to go into Bryant-Denny Stadium and get a win against the Nick Saban-led team is Cam Newton, Jarrett Lee, Johnny Manziel, Chad Kelly, and Joe Burrow. 3 out of those 5 guys are Heisman Trophy winners. Jarrett Lee, take him out. They were it's the 2011 first game before they went and played again in the national championship game. Jordan Jefferson was actually the difference in that game. Them running the outside option off the tackle. That's what ultimately did it in that 9-6 game of the century. You talk about Chad Kelly. Chad Kelly was a very good quarterback. I think he was at the Canadian Football League MVP. Very good college quarterback. 4 out of those 5 guys are excellent college quarterbacks. 3 of them probably being 3 of the top 10 quarterbacks of all time in college football history. Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel, and Joe Burrow. Does Quinn Ewers have that in him? Does he want to be in that class outside of Jarrett Lee? Also, how will Steve Sarkisian coach in this one? Does he get a little bit out of his comfort zone, or do they play their style of football? I mean, I see people say, oh, they're going to go up tempo. Like, they need to go up tempo. Sark doesn't like to go up tempo. He also doesn't like to just take shots downfield. He likes to run the football. Throw in Sark struggled on the road as the University of Texas's head coach as well. 3-6 straight up, with 5 of those 6 losses being by double digits. Let me repeat that stat for you. He's 3-6 on the road as Texas's head coach so far, with 5 of the 6 losses being by double digits. Let's think that in. I mean, I do think Sark has the ability. And also Texas playing Alabama so close last year has the ability to kind of take that icebreaker off. They need to go win this game, because so many times over the years, people lose the game in pregame warmups and they just look across the other side of the field to see Alabama. When they've had the nasty 2016, 17, 18 defenses like that, I mean, people will lose game in pregame warm-ups. I don't really think Texas is going to do that because Sark has worked at Alabama, obviously. Hell, this is a battle of two guys that have been head coaches at Alabama. Remember, people forget. It's not talked about. It's a little pointless stab, but Steve Sarkisian was the head coach in the 2020 Iron Bowl when Nick Saban was out with COVID. He's 1-0 as the head coach at Alabama. 1,000% winning percentage. 1,000 winning percentage. Nick Saban also, obviously, we know the damage obviously he's done. But jokes aside, I think Sark can kind of take that icebreaker off. Like, guys, I've worked there. This is what it's really like at Alabama. They bleed too. They're human beings. They bleed just like us. And also, Texas should have won the game last year. If Quinn Ewers doesn't go out, you could have made an argument they do win that game. If Bryce Young wasn't on the team, Alabama loses that game too. The only issue is Texas probably feels real confident right now, heading into the Thursday night meetings. Guys are going home, watching Thursday night football, watching the Lions, Chiefs. Oh, they feel good about going to Tuscaloosa. The only thing is, does Texas blink when they get there on Saturday? Is it going to be too big for them? They look and feel confident right now. Just saying. I mean, something else as we set the tone here. Alabama, another team on the other end. It's kind of a faceless team for them this year. There's no Bryce Young or Will Anderson. I mean, Bryce Young was one of the face of not only Alabama, but college football last year. Will Anderson, probably the best defensive player in college, or one of the best defensive players in college football last year. Kind of the face of defense in college football for the last 2 years. You had both those guys, just superstars on both sides. The Tide as a team this year seems to be a bit more by committee approach this year. And that's usually when the Tide is at its most complete. The offense, it's going to be more steady than explosive sometimes. They're going to take the 4 to 6 yard plays they're going to get. I expect Jalen Milroe to have his fair share of mistakes in this game. People have to forget that this isn't going to be Tua Tagovailoa. This isn't going to be Jalen Hurts. This isn't going to be Mac Jones. This isn't going to be Bryce Young. Jalen Milroe is still developing as a passer. But I think they're going to make the necessary plays on offense to do enough on offense to win the game. The key for Bama offensively is who is getting them in the right protections. Bryce Young did a fantastic job of that last year. Bama's had centers who've gotten them in the right protections before. Back when Blake Sims was the quarterback with Ryan Kelly. Jalen Milroe or the center Seth McLaughlin. Seth McLaughlin's got to get those snaps up. I mean, you saw the one that he rolled back to Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe took it. The athlete that he is ended up scoring on Alabama's first touchdown. That wasn't the only bad snap all game. There were a couple at his feet. Jalen had to go bend down to get. That's got to be improved. But who's making those protections? Because, like I'm mentioning, another position to watch right here. I'm just about to talk about it. The Texas defensive line is actually getting to an SEC level next year. I think when people start watching more Texas football in 24 start next year, they're going to be, man, they got some 6'4", 6'5", 280-pound, 260-pound dudes who are long, athletic, and can move vertically and laterally and get after the quarterback in the pocket. I mean, I think you're going to see that. I mean, guys like Alfred Collins, Byron Murphy, T'Vondre Sweat. T'Vondre Sweat's going to be the one to watch, I'm telling you. This game's going to come down to – but in my opinion, though, outside of the defensive line for Texas, who is a very good unit, probably their best from top to bottom, in my opinion, and some people may call me crazy because they think it's the receivers. This game's going to ultimately come down to, does Quinn Ewers make enough explosive plays downfield to win this game? Because as we all know, the key to beating Alabama is winning the explosive plays down the field battle, winning the explosive play down the field battle. You got to make plays on Alabama down. You got to take advantage of one-on-one situations, and your receivers got to make plays. It kind of just reminds me of the 2015 Ole Miss game. They made every one-on-one play. You're not going to go drive 75, 80 yards on Alabama consistently. You're either going to get impatient, someone's going to make a mistake. You have to go take advantage of them downfield. And can Quinn Ewers do that? Because he has struggled with the deep ball, even going back to the end of last year, and even this first game against Rice. Overthrowing Xavier Worthy, underthrowing Xavier Worthy. That's going to be key. The way you beat Alabama is with explosive plays. But a thing to keep an eye out, talked about it around the SEC segment, Malachi Moore and Jalen Key a little banged up. Jalen Key, the UAB transfer, got the start in the secondary. It's going to be key him being back there with the young cat, Caleb Downs, who's a fantastic player, getting Minka Fitzpatrick type reviews, but he's still just a freshman. Against a Steve Sarkisian offense that smells trouble. And Malachi Moore, who's been there since the beginning of time, gets the start at nickel. They both practice Wednesday, so that's a good sign that they're going to play. They usually don't practice by Wednesday. You're not going to play for my history. So that'll be it. That'll be a matchup to watch too. So like you said, before we get into this, where it'll be won, two matchups that besides where it'll be won that you need to keep an eye on is how healthy are Malachi Moore and Jalen Key. And watch that Texas offensive line. The funnest matchup to watch is going to be the Texas offensive line versus which I think is a pretty good Alabama offensive line. There's going to be some monsters in those trenches, some creatures. But where this game will be won, speaking of the trenches, you notice I go there a lot because that's where football's won, up front in the big uglies. Alabama's front four, front seven, against the interior of the Texas offensive line. Guys like Hayden Connor, Jake Majors, and DJ Campbell will determine this game for Texas. That's for if you don't know that. That's the interior of the Longhorn offensive line from left to right. Hayden Connor, the left guard, Jake Majors, the center, and then DJ Campbell, the right guard. They struggled last week. I'm about to pull it up for you right now. They struggled last week to run the ball and protect Rice. I'm pulling up the screen right now for you. Let's pull up some film here. Just a couple quick plays I want to show you. All right, here's the situation. First quarter, as you can tell, 4:07 left. 3rd-9 situation. First quarter, Texas up 7-3. But this is only a 4-man pressure they brought here. I mean, some guys dropped into coverage. They're only bringing 4 here. And they get to Quinn Ewers pretty easily. I mean, Kevin Steele, we'll get to it in a minute. He likes to disguise blitzes. He likes to blitz on the interior, twist, stunts, confuse offensive linemen, especially interior offensive line. He's going to do a lot of this. Bring it back for you right here. I mean, they have the entire offensive line here confused. And this is Rice. This was a poor run defense last year. And I know they're dropping back to pass. They're in pass protection here. Rice getting up the field. But this is not a very good front by Rice. Sorry, here's the play right here. Last time for you. Springing stuff from all over the place, and Texas just doesn't pick it up. They're only bringing 4, man. Texas got an extra blocker here. I mean, this is 101 install stuff. Cat corner blitz over here from the boundary. They just don't pick it up. Quinn Ewers, again, puts his head down, not keeping his eyes down the field. That's key in quarterback play, guys. And I think Alabama's going to be able to get to him like this in the backfield. I think they're easily going to be able to get to him in the backfield. Now, let me pull up my notes here. I want to bring up another play for you here at the 30-11 mark. We're going back and watching this game, and then we'll move on, and then we'll continue with the preview. All right, here it is. Here's the situation. 4th and 1, second quarter. Texas struggling right now. Been limited in field goals. Thank goodness for their kicker. That's going to be a battle in itself, too. Burt Auburn is the Texas kicker. Both Alabama and Texas both have really good kickers. And Alabama with Will Reichard, Texas with Burt Auburn. But 4th and 1 here. You can tell Sark, this isn't really about – I know Texas was very vanilla scheme-wise. They're not going to go show Alabama a lot. I get that. But this is about – me beating my man across from me, mano a mano, when I know I'm better than him. I've always kind of questioned just how tough these Texas kids are from a high school standpoint, not Texas Longhorns, but they recruit predominantly Texas kids, how tough they are in the interior. I mean, I know Rice probably has some kids too from Texas too, but 4th and 1, your coaches believing in you, trying to go pick up the first down. We're trying to get some momentum, get Uncle Mo back on our side offensively. He trusts you. It's 4th and 1 here, and this is what happens. We're struggling in the first half to get anything going here if you're Texas. This is what happens. I mean, just totally. I mean, what is this by Jatavian Sanders here, the tight end, the H-back coming in as the sniffer? I mean, just getting pushed back. Again, I don't think this is a nasty front at Texas. And I think Alabama's front seven is a lot nastier than they've been in the last 2 years. This is something I think Bama can take advantage of. Kevin Steele, if I'm seeing it, Kevin Steele's seeing it. Look, no real push. Rice gets the stop on 4th down. I think they got another stop on 4th down as well. Texas did not, I don't care what people tell you, they did not get a lot of push against Rice last week, and that's concerning. That's concerning to me, if I'm just being completely honest with you, because I know you're, like I said, I know you're vanilla scheme wise, but again, it's Rice. It's mano a mano. If we got to go pick up a yard, guys, and you didn't do it, scheme be damn there. This is just me going to dominate the guy across from me. Again, they didn't show much. They have to get pushed against one of the worst rushing defenses in the country from last year. Like I mentioned, Kevin Steele likes to bring stunts, blitzes specifically through the inside gaps, the A and B gaps. They're going to see a ton of that. Expect guys like Deontay Lawson to be rolling through the B gap and doing what he wants, I think is what's going to happen on this. Add in, you're probably going to get some backdoor sacks if you're getting pressure on the interior and you're on Quinn Ewers' feet, putting his head down, some backdoor stats from probably one of the best, if not the best, outside linebacker room edge rushers in the country. Guys like Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Quindarius Robinson. The pocket will be collapsing, and those guys will come from the back door, and they're going to eat, for lack of a better term. If you're Texas, the interior offensive line concerns you. It has to. I mean, this game's going to come down to guys Hayden Conner, Jake Majors, DJ Campbell. If you did not hear me again, those three guys are on notice. Hayden Conner, left guard, Jake Majors, center, DJ Campbell. Struggled against Rice this week. I don't anticipate that improving in a raucous Tuscaloosa Bryant-Denny Stadium environment against a much improved Alabama defense, especially in the front seven. But it's prediction time now, baby. Prediction. Remember, I told you going into the season, I picked this as one of Alabama's 2 losses. I did. Man, if times have changed, give me the Tide. Give me Alabama 31-17. I may be wrong, but I do not think Quinn Ewers will become the 6th quarterback to win in Bryant-Denny Stadium since 2008. I don't think it happens. I think guys like Jaheim Otis, Tim Keenan, Justin Boyboy, and Jamarian Latham are the difference. The guys on the interior for the Alabama defensive line, I think they win that battle against Texas's interior offensive line. Ewers is uncomfortable all night. It's going to be making throws off balance. It may take Texas's equipment guy until the next road game, I think, when they go to Baylor from looking at their schedule, to get the grass stains off his uniform. I think Bama's going to be in his face all night. Bama's offense will have its negative moments. Do not get me wrong. People do not go get frustrated. It is what it is. But Bama and the Jalen Milroe-led Alabama offense will be efficient. I'm going to like Tommy Rees dialing up some plays to get Alabama in manageable situations. I think they'll be effective enough to outscore Texas at home. Bama pulls away late after a couple of big third-down conversions. And the front seven of Alabama is the talk of college football heading into week 3. Bama gets the 31-17 win. So I previewed all 5 of those big matchups. Just again, recapping them. I like the Rebs to go into New Orleans, get a win in the Big Easy. They should. Ole Miss should go handle this handily, I think. Tulane's better than I anticipated. I thought South Alabama would beat them, but Ole Miss should get this win. Arizona at Mississippi State, game's going to be a lot closer than I think. Just under the radar bet. It wouldn't shot. If you're leaning, taking Arizona plus 9.5, I don't blame you. I think Arizona's a good 6-7 win team this year. It's going to be a tougher challenge than people that don't know a lot of football, casual fans out there would think. It's going to be a tougher game, but I think State makes a few plays late. 32-28 Mississippi State. Auburn at Cal, interesting, tricky game. Auburn just needs to survive it in Hugh Freeze's second game on the Plains. Heading out to the Bay Area, late night kickoff, 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone, right after the Alabama-Texas game. It'll take you to that. Auburn favored by 6.5 right now. I love the over. We'll go through my bets one more time before we get you out of here, but I like Auburn in a close one. Auburn just needs to survive. I like Auburn 35-31. Texas A&M at Miami. Kind of feel the same way with Texas A&M as I do with Ole Miss. I think A&M is going to go look really good. I love Texas A&M minus 4.5. I think they pull away late in the second half. Offense is not going to be the issue. Their eye discipline, communicating on defense, passing off guys on defense, because that's what Shannon Dawson, guys, Miami quarterback Tyler Van Dyke want to do. The simple throw is going to get it out. People are going to be like, well, A&M's not getting a bunch of sacks. Well, they're not going to be able to because the Miami offense is going to get it out quickly. It's just a style game, but I think A&M does end up getting a double-digit win, covering easily, 38-24. And then finally, the big one, everybody's going to be there, college game day. I like Alabama. Didn't like it heading into the season. But you know what? I have more information at hand now after week 1, talking to people, watching film. I like Bama minus 7.5. Also like Alabama is defensive line on the interior to just outlast and control the game against Texas' interior of their offensive line. Again, love Bama there. Like them a lot more than I did. I got Bama 31-17. But recapping, just because we got Connor on right before, Money Making Thursday. If you're writing them down, get out your pen. Start transferring that money to your college kids, your kids' college fund. Colorado minus 3 at home against Nebraska. Texas A&M minus 4.5 at Miami. And my Great White Buffalo guarantee of the week. Random game. Probably won't get more random as we go. Who knows? We got a couple more. We got about 11, 12 more weeks of this. But UConn plus 3.5 over Georgia State. Love it. I guarantee of the week. Jim Moore and them are, I don't know why, the wrong team's favored. Let's just put it that way. Again, I told you I like Bama minus 7.5. I think UTSA gets a little bit of a revenge game. They thought they should have beat Houston last week. I think Texas State's coming in real high on themselves. I like UTSA versus Texas State. Give me the minus 11 with the Roadrunners and Jeff Traylor and the boys. Then I got some over-unders I've been really good at all year. Auburn, Cal, give me the over 54.5. Ole Miss, Tulane over 62.5. We're going 7-0 this week. But guys, we covered a lot on the show. We had Texas A&M beat writer from GigEm 247, Carter Karels, joined us. Talked about that Miami Texas A&M matchup. He likes Miami. He likes Texas A&M. He'll be heading to Miami tomorrow. I like Texas A&M as well. Gave us some good information on some matchups there. Went around the SEC. Jalen Key, Malachi Moore at practice for the Tide. The SEC released its basketball schedule. We talked about that. We previewed all the week 2 matchups. Talked a little Mac Brown, Tez Walker. I know it's not SEC, but just wanted to throw that out there. But it's going to be a fun weekend. The SEC needs to go redeem itself after going 1-3 in the Big 4 matchups this week. There's 6 that the SEC can go take advantage of in non-conference play this week. I like the SEC overall. I really do. But again, exciting matchups this weekend. Hope to see you. Remember, next episode will be this upcoming Monday. Hope to see you on that one. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend.